Also, with functions, when you're doing smaller code or smaller programs, it can seem a little pointless to use them. But it is when you start getting into bigger code that it becomes more useful. For example, this is almost 1,000 lines of code, and if I wasn't using functions, it would be even longer. And so generally what I kind of have two reasons for putting code into a function instead of just running it in the main application. So number one being it makes code a little bit easier to read. So for example, I've got this thing called, this function called getApplicationStatus, and it does all of this stuff. And so it's just easier for me to know, like, in my main code when I call this, like, I know it's getting the application status, even if I don't know right off the top of my head exactly how it's doing it. But suddenly, yeah, this, I just know, hey, I pass in these things, and I get these things out, and these are the things I need. Like, I don't need to worry about the internal functionality of this. I just need to know what its input and its output is, and that's good enough for me. Even though I did, code it, I don't have to remember what I did. So it makes, the code a little bit cleaner to understand. So, if I haven't looked at my code in a while, this is the main stuff that's running, and I can just look through and say, oh, okay, I log in, got some logic for whether the login worked or not, and then I get the application status, and so on and so forth. So that's one reason, to just make code more readable and to give a definitive name to what a section of code is doing. The second situation that I will use functions is if I'm doing the same thing repeatedly and throughout my code, and it's easier to just have some code that does it every time for me. So one good example of that, let's see, there we go, this load page function. So again, going to healthcare.gov and visiting different pages on it, and so I have some logic here to just see if the page is loaded correctly and to do some things to check if everything's okay with the website. And so load page is called quite a few times, and if I didn't have a function to do this for me, like it would just be that same this function code pasted everywhere that load pages. So it saves space, and then if I suddenly decide that, hey, instead of waiting for 10 seconds each time I try to load this web page, I want to do it 20 seconds, I only have to change it in this one place, and then everywhere in my code that calls this function will work at 20 seconds instead of having to replace every 10 with a 20. So again, yeah, functions are more useful in large projects, but it's good to get into the habit of looking out for, hey, if I have duplicated sections of code, maybe I can put those into a function, or I've got a lot of lines doing one thing, and me looking at those lines of code doesn't readily tell me what it's doing. Maybe I should put that into a function that says what those lines are doing.